NLP, as I understand and as I've always taught, is about learning and prioritizing how to think. It is a way to think, it is a way to live. NLP is more about how to prioritize and sort our thoughts in order to get the results we want. In order to explain that, before we start on NLP, let me share a little bit about what is learning. I'm sharing a PPT screen right now, and I hope it's pretty clear to you. So as we understand, today we are going to talk about introduction to NLP. The first part of it, that is N, the neuro, the prefix, that's neuro. And what does neuro work on? So today's whole session is about the neurology of it. The second session is going to be about language. And the third session is going to be about programming. Each Saturday, these consecutive Saturdays, 6 p.m., make sure you're there and we can make a lot out of it. So to start with, I want you to think of your perfect cup. It could be tea or coffee, whatever you like. And cup is a representation of fulfillment in so many ways. Yet, many of you have heard that story where if the cup overflows, it is very difficult to put something in it. The story comes from a Zen monk who met somebody who wanted to learn more. And when the Zen monk put tea in the cup, he didn't stop and it kept overflowing, referring to one must empty the cup before we can learn more. Let us take it a little bit further. Now, what is a cup of coffee without a cookie? You enjoy cookies, I believe. Most of you enjoy cookies with your coffee, and cookies are real fun. They make your cup special. Let us take this cookie as an icon of learning today. And all of us know something. A lot of us know a lot of information and knowledge and subjects. We are all experts in our fields. And that is what I would like to call, I know what I know. The area of what I am an expert in. All of you are expert in something. It is called, I know what I know. It gives you confidence and also gives you your livelihood at times. Yet, all of us are aware of another area, which is, I would say, I know what I do not know. Something that I'm not aware of. I know that it exists. Maybe it is the skill of NLP, that, okay, I know NLP exists, but I don't know NLP. Or it's a skill of maybe cooking. Like, I know cooking exists, but I don't know how to do it. So many of us are aware of what I know, and I know what I don't know. And yet, there is another area of it. The whole area of, I don't know what I don't know. I don't know what I don't know. John Grinder calls this area the know nothing area. It's like when you're a child, you know nothing. No beliefs, no values, no methods, just what you want. I know what I know. I know what I don't know, and I don't know what I don't know. This area called I don't know what I don't know is also called the learning zone. And when we step into this learning zone, which is I don't know what I don't know, and I'm open to learning, we learn maximum. So let me invite you all to step into this zone called I don't know what I don't know. Do you think it's a good idea? This is the area where learning really happens. This is one area where learning really happens. So guys, we all just saw how learning is most important for us, and it really happens when we step out of the zone called I know what I know. So I would request you to unmute your mics and share your views either on chat or on voice, that what do you feel about it?
It's a very interesting analogy, Ashish. So, I'm from the field of project management. So one of the things we do is identify risk. And we often talk in the realm of risk identification that there are a few issues which are known. And then there are known risks. And then there are like unknown unknowns, because risk is an unknown. So, so we said there are known unknowns and then there are unknown unknowns. Yes. Similarly, in the field of hiring, when we hire people, so we see their, aptitude, like the freshers. So you look at them and you try to assess how much do they know about what they don't know, kind of thing. So both ways, it's a very relevant.
So similarly, in the field of learning, whenever I have to learn something, I want to go and learn something, I choose to step into the know nothing zone. Like as in the comments window, I see it's also very close to the Johari window. Yes, it is close to Johari window. Yet this is a very simplified version, which we call the cookie of learning or the pie of learning. It's popularly known as the pie of learning or cookie of learning. I prefer to call it cookie of learning because I love cookies. I'm sure you love them too.
Yeah. It's something like Ashish, Kamaldeep here. It's something like the conscious incompetence, from conscious, moving from conscious incompetence to conscious competence, sort of a zone.
Yeah. Exactly. So
at times there could be certain things that, like, I don't know what I don't know. It could be I don't know what I know. We are not even aware of our potentials as well. So we are not aware that is also when a learning can be potentiated, I guess.
Yes. Learning happens when we let go of what we know temporarily.
Yes, unlearn. Yes.
So for the scope of this session and any other session you ever attend or any book you read, I would invite you to step into the know nothing zone, KNOW, nothing, know nothing zone. I don't know what I don't know. And then once you have completed that, once you have completed that chapter and that learning and that session, go back and align your learning, new learning, with the old learning. Now, one small note that if we do not do, what happens? Let me give you a quote which was originally by Mark Twain and then re-quoted by Richard Bandler. Similar is not same, it is the difference that makes the difference. Similar is not same, it's the difference that makes the difference. What it means is that if we go into I know what I know zone and then we try to learn something, we think it's similar to what we know and therefore our learning is incomplete. We get into the similarity zone. Therefore, the uniqueness of new learning is so important. So this concept and many such concepts I'll be sharing will be similar to a lot of concepts and yet will have their own uniqueness. Does that make sense? What do you guys say?
Yeah, Ashish, I have got a query.
Sure. Yes, Adi.
Hello.
Yes, Adi, please speak. Adi, we can hear you.
Yeah. So Ashish, I've got a query. What is the level of learning which takes place in the zone of I know what I don't know?
Sure. So I know what I don't know is the pathway to I don't know what I don't know. I know what I don't know helps us choose what we are going to learn next. It is the pathway, it's the tunnel you cross. When people stay into I know what I know, learning stops. And then they open that window of fresh air which says, I started knowing what I do not know as yet. And this pulls you into the know nothing zone, the learning zone, the zone which says, I don't know what I don't know, and let me learn further. So Adi, does that answer your question?
Yeah. So when I reflect on this, it also means that if I do not know if I know what I do not know, then I look for solutions. I look for some learning pathways.
Yes.
I look for some learning resources.
Yes.
So I'm also curious to learn what I am
Yes.
not knowing. So I'm aware of my learning gaps. So I look for resources to fill up those gaps.
Wonderful. Yes, yes, exactly, exactly. So this is also, I know what I don't know is also the awareness window.
Yeah.
You can also call it the awareness window.
Ashish, can I chip in?
Sure, sure, Atul.
Ashish, does coaching and counseling has a role in this phase of I don't know what I don't know, and do the coaches oblique counselors guide you in this area?
Beautiful question, and I would love to answer this one. This is a wonderful question. So let us first understand slight differences between counseling and coaching. Counseling comes from the word counsel. Counsel means to tell with your own experience and books you've read and knowledge you have. So in counseling, we would, as a counselor, we would use the idea of I know what I know, and then I can share that with you. Coaching, on the other hand, moves into the unknown. When a coach is sitting on his chair, he says, I am neutral, I don't know, and let me find out a resource within you by the methods I know. Let me find a resource within the client to help him get the desired state or the goal. So, in counseling, we would go into I know what I know zone a couple of times, but for the sake of neutrality, we would always prefer to sit into I don't know what I don't know zone, the neutral zone, so that we learn more and more about the client with an open mind and not think of, hey, this is similar to that. So always remembering similar is not same. It is the difference that makes the difference. So does that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you.
Atul? Thank you, thank you. Any more comments and questions onto this? And then we can move ahead to the second part, where we actually start understanding how neurology communicates. Good. I think we are good enough to go to the second part. Thank you so much.
Ashish,
Yeah, sure.
yeah, this is Kuldeep. So the point that you were, reflecting upon the moving into I don't know what I don't know zone. As a coach, I'm just giving a statement. I'm requesting for your validation on that. So probably if we don't do that and we remain in
Sure.
I know what I know,
Sure.
I know what I know, or even I know what I don't know, probably it may become a kind of roadblock in understanding the client, because every client experiences are different, every individual is different. So their problem and their circumstances, their experience actually impacts the way they proceed towards the solution. So it is probably very, very important for us as a coach to move into I don't know what I don't know, so that we go into their experiences and then help them to lead to the solutions. Am I right?
Yes, absolutely. Well, you're bang on onto that. Wonderful. Very well explained. I don't know what I don't know zone helps you stay into a neutral zone. Of course, you use the toolboxes and tools you have learned, but you do not carry your opinions. You do not carry your beliefs, your values while doing that.
Right.
Only carry your tools. It's like a surgeon going into an operation theater, only carrying his tools and leaving his beliefs, values, behaviors, everything aside.
Thank
So,
you. Yeah.
yes, you're absolutely right there. And let us move to another part of a small presentation. Let me share this with you. So this is what we saw, the learning zone, and this is how learning happens. I think now this graphic makes much more sense to you. I don't know what I don't know is where learning really happens. So from there, moving to what is the pre growth. it is referring to the mind. Neurology is a vast field, and we are not going to touch on to that today here. Of course, we touch into it when we go into the course and everything, but how does the communication happen in the neuro section? So neuro is referring to the mind or brain, particularly regarding the states of mind and body that affect communication and behavior. What is NLP's role here? NLP teaches us a structural way of viewing mind and body states. Structure is very important. Developing mental maps and show how things happen and how they can change. And the beginning of neurology, neuro, is our five senses. The five senses we know: the visual sense, we see things. We taste, we smell, we hear. These five senses are what we call the input points, but in NLP we call them representational systems, because these senses not only represent the input but also help in the output. With your voice, you can speak also by representing your own thoughts. Auditory, you can hear and speak. Visually, you can draw and show. Kinesthetic, you can touch and show. Taste, smell, all these five senses in NLP are called the representational systems. And let us see how they bring in the information. So all these five senses give us a lot of information from what is happening outside, and what simplicity we're going to call reality, the reality outside, what is actually there. And when we do so, it reaches us not directly, but through a set of filters. The set of filters include our values, our beliefs, our memories, our attitudes and decisions, and much more. Meta programs, as you'll study further when you do your NLP program. So values, beliefs, memories, attitudes, and decisions are really, really important filters. For example, if you see something outside, it will first reach these filters, and then based on these filters, you will make an internal representation of something. In layman terms, I can call it the perception. So there is reality outside, and then there's a set of filters. And when it crosses these filters, there's a process called match-mismatch happening all the time. It is happening real time. Three processes happen there: deletions, distortions, and generalizations. So everything you see outside, you hear outside, you feel, smell, or you taste, it will go through values, beliefs, memories, attitudes, and decisions, and then form an internal representation of the reality. This is what is fed to our mind and the processing unit, what is there in our head, which further results into the body and behavioral response, physiology and psychology, the responses of the body and the behavior. So looking deeply into this diagram, and let me slowly take it, whatever you see outside, let's assume that you're going on a road and you see a boy in yellow dress and pink trousers dancing. Let us say that is reality happening outside. In filters, you will have values, you'll believe, and you say whether it matches to your values or beliefs or memories or attitudes or decisions. And based on that, you will form what we call a view of it, an internal view, an internal representation of it. This internal representation is processed and turns into our body and behavioral response to the reality. So when we look closely, we do not respond to reality itself. We always respond to the internal representation of reality, which is different for everybody. So the same thing is witnessed and experienced by 10 different people. They will have different internal representations to this. So looking at this, you see that there's a yellow box on the screen. You can see that what is happening outside is reality, Everything else is happening within us. And our responses to any situation are because of our values, our beliefs, our memories, our attitudes and decisions and more, and not because of the reality. It may take a little time to trickle in and settle within you. Whenever you're sad or happy or experiencing experience, it may not be because of the reality outside. It may be because the internal representation based on your values and beliefs and memories and attitudes and decisions is affecting you there. So how does that land with you? What do you feel about it? Yes, I see a lot of silence here.
I think
So please
it's a
speak.
reality,
Yeah.
it's a reality. That's why we often bring in the perspective or the perception angle. What was our interpretation of the thing? And a lot of conflicts, basically we say, can be easily resolved if we understand that maybe it was my own interpretation of what happened.
Yes.
Yeah, but it is definitely deep. Yeah. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you. I would also request other people to share their views on what they understand, and we will go a little deeper into it right now. I'm sure you're enjoying this.
Yes, Ashish, if I can come in here.
Yes, please, Adit.
Yeah, so I totally resonate with what you are talking about the perceptions, because if 10 people look at an object or a person, the way they process, the way they internalize, and the way they behave are going to be totally 10 different perceptions and 10 different behaviors. So I totally resonate with what you are talking about, and it's a great example that you have given.
Yeah. So this our response, whatever we react to or respond to anything, is primarily our filters. So sometimes we end up blaming the outside world for it. Let me share some examples.
Question.
Yes, Kamal, please.
So are we saying here? So when you show the yellow box to us, is somewhere the assumption that if a behavior change has to happen, we need to start working at the values and the belief level?
Absolutely. And that is exactly the next step. And that is where we will be discussing this, that in order to get the result, the desired result in terms of our behavior or our body, our health, our goals, and we can choose to look at that what kind of internal representation can we choose. So let's see the diagram once again. So when we see that there is a body and behavioral response we want, let's say I want a certain kind of health, certain kind of behavior, certain kind of goals I want to achieve. They are now depending on the internal representation actually. So when they are depending on the internal representation, the question that comes to me is, how do I flexibly tweak my values or my beliefs or my memories or my attitudes or my decisions in order to get the right internal representation? It's not too much about the reality outside. It's more about the internal. For example, let's say somebody has a belief that every time I work hard, things don't work out. And suppose this belief is set. So a coach will help this person to alter this belief to that when I hard work, things happen. And when with new belief he sees an internal representation, that is going to guide him to get the results he wants. Now, it is easier said than done because that belief may be based on some memories that he's got those experiences. So a coach will choose to, and especially in the field of NLP, we choose to erase or dilute some memories. So there are actual processes that we'll cover in programming part, where how do we kind of fade off memories? How do we help attitudes change and bring in flexibility? How do we see that decisions are affecting our life? like there will be people whom you coach, and some of us would also experience that some decisions which we have taken in our life are affecting our life even now, and maybe not in a very good way. But then decision is in the mind. We can dilute those decisions to get the response we want. And these are all in-depth NLP processes, which of course we cover in the NLP training program, and how to really add new values, how to replace beliefs, how to fade off memories and plant new memories, how to change attitudes, and how to alter decisions in life. So once we change this, an internal representation changes and we get the response we want. So does that answer your question, Kamal?
Yes, it does. It sounds very empowering, Ashish.
Yes. Yes, because now it is dependent on us, not outside.
Yes, that's right.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Most welcome. I would like to know from more people here. What are your views? Any questions and any discussions you'd like to have before we move forward?
Hello.
Yes, Gunveet.
Yes, sir. Good evening.
Good evening.
So, what I've learned from experience is there is one thing called decision making, and other thing is wise decision making. Now, what happens is, let's say we have received some information, we process it through the yellow box of our own mind, and then we interpret it. But the other way would be we merge our yellow box of thinking with the other person's yellow box of thinking, what the other person is expecting and what we want, and we merge and we give a wise decision or a wise solution we come out. Now, how to figure out the yellow box of the other person so that we get a positive solution to the question we are looking for?
Okay, excellent question, Gunveet. I think many of you would have this question with you, and this especially comes to a special area where I work, and some of you also work in that area, which is relationship coaching. So when we are talking about two people there, when we are talking about two people with two different mental maps, or broadly you can say mindsets, they come together, whether it's in a relationship or a business partnership, or being friends, or being partners into something. Now, lot of times, and what I've seen in my experience, this happens by a tool which we have called assumptions. We assume a lot before investigating or checking or mapping it properly. How does it happen? Let us take the example of a couple, and this example can be taken in business partnership and friends and any other relationships for that matter, even a father and a son, daughter, cousins, anybody. So let's take the example of a couple, and let's say that one fine day they decide to enter a relationship and say, we are going to be together now at this moment onwards. Usually this happens at a certain age. It has not happened in the childhood nowadays. Childhood marriages are not really happening now. But when we see that it happens at a certain age, let's assume that age is 25 for a minute. Now, two different people have grown differently. They have different values, different beliefs, absolutely different memories, different attitudes, and obviously many decisions are going to be different, except for the one getting together. And then one of them or both of them assume that whatever my bringing up has taught me, the other person would have also learned the same. This is a huge assumption. This is a huge assumption. So somebody who's lived 25 years of his life in a different town or a different city or a different school or different college or different set of friends, different kind of a family, assuming that he will have the same learnings as you have is going to be really unfair. And then, because we have spent 25 years sticking to what we have learned, we believe what we know is right. You know, the concept of right comes in, automatically making us think into what we call binary thinking. that if this is right, the other one may be wrong. This whole binary thinking, which is the opposite of right is wrong, creates a lot of problem. Therefore, a choice which I suggest to a lot of people is stepping into a multi-perceptional viewing of the situation or a relationship, which is I am right and the other person is right too. मैं अपनी जगह सही हूँ और दूसरा अपनी जगह सही है. हम सब अपनी अपनी जगह ठीक हैं. और क्या उस रिलेशनशिप या बिजनेस पार्टनरशिप में आने से पहले have we really talked about what are our goals? Have we done a belief matching exercise? Have we done a value matching exercise? Have we done a behavior mapping or matching exercise? Are our skills compatible to each other or not? There are 5 levels to it: skills, behaviors, beliefs, values, attitudes. And all these are really, really important because they're the outcomes of your bringing up. Now, how to cross this? There are only 2 tools: flexibility and curiosity. Find out what can take us to a common goal, and are we flexible enough together to walk towards that goal? So, Gunveet, does that answer a little bit of your question?
Yes, sir. Very valid answers.
Thank you. Thank you.
You have very perfectly understood the situation, because sometimes what happens in office, the kind of job or industry I'm working is, we have to deal with the vendors. Like we have given some requirement in our documents, and vendor gives us certain inputs. Sometimes vendor maps the inputs which we have sent. Sometimes the vendor takes to know मैं तो यही दूंगा. So, well, in the last, like you said, we have to find the common goal and map it. So that is very perfectly said.
We have to find the common goal. We have to do an exercise called belief mapping, value mapping, behavior mapping, attitude mapping, decision mapping. Are we mapping these things? Are we compatible in our skills? This is really, really important. So whether you're entering a business partnership, a friendship, a relationship, you can do that. And also a lot of couples who come for coaching, I do these exercises with them. You can do it with your people at home. And then before stepping into it, decide that we are going to be flexible about it so that we get our goals. Common goals are really, really important. They drive a journey together. And I'd like to know other people's view about it. Yes, please.
Ashish, I would like to add something. Am I audible? Hello?
Yes, Namrata.
Yeah, hi. So
yes,
I
Namrata,
think
you're audible.
Yeah, so I think a lot of problems that we also label these days as generation gaps are caused between parents and children on account of their memories being different, their attitudes being different, their past experiences being different. Is that correct?
Yes, that is yeah. So what we term as a generational gap is actually in NLP, I would call it the representational gap. They represent things differently in their lives. Also, a little mistake, or I would say not a mistake, but a well-wishing mistake is what parents do, that when they try to chart the life of the child, when they decide that, okay, my child is going to become this, and I would like to see my child so successful in these areas. Now, you have set the goal as a parent. Are you looking into the goals of the child? What does he want? Maybe he just wants to sit and chill. Maybe that's his goal. Maybe you have given him so much comfort that that has become his comfort zone. Are you ready to work hard with him by giving 3 things? Time, space, and presence. So when parents invest time, space, and presence with their children, chances are you will reach an aligned goal, build common beliefs, build common values, behaviors, and maybe your decisions are similar, they're closer, and that can help. Right, Namrata?
Right.
Right. Anything else onto it from the audience? Anybody would like to comment?
Ashish, I've got a query. I need
sure,
help in this. While I'm very clear about the filters of values, beliefs, memories, and attitudes, can you help me to understand about decisions a little more?
Yes. So decisions. So whether we agree or not, whenever we make decisions in our lives, they have far-reaching impacts. Even the smallest decision can have a far-reaching impact if you're not flexible about it. For example, as a child, one fine day you decided to wear a red shirt. In your friends group, let's say there's somebody who has a view about color red. He has created a perception there and then. You're not even aware about it. So when you take small or big decisions, people around you make perceptions, internal representations, as we say. And then, suppose you have to work with them at some point of time, this clashes. Let me give you one more example. I met a parent recently who said that I believe that all children must study well and get great marks in the school. Very simple, normal sentence. We all have heard it. I asked him, where does this belief come from? So that took him to his childhood, where he said that I didn't study very well and I didn't get good marks, and therefore I couldn't make my career. So his own memory is making him decide that his child and other children must do that. Decisions can be triggered by memories. Now, when there is a decision, whenever we take decisions in life, we try to stand by them. And when we try to stand by our decisions, we also want mass justification and validation. We want others to validate our own decisions. Let's say you decide one day to take up a particular profession or a job. You would like that other people also validate you. Let us take a simpler example of a decision of eating a particular kind of a food. When you eat a particular kind of food and you decide that this is the food I would like to have, chances are you might like to 10, 20 people about it and say, hey, you also go and try that. It is really good. So when we make decisions, we try to validate ourselves in many, many ways, which can really harm our relationships big time. Maybe we can choose to step into the zone of I don't know what I don't know and say, I am okay where I am and the other person's okay where he is. And if I really need to reach to a goal together, let us step into discussions and do some mapping there. Are our decisions aligned to each other or not? So, does that make some sense? What do you say?
Thank you so much, Ashish, for clarifying it. So if I understood it correctly, if I need to change the behavior of the other person, what is it that I need to do about my decisions which are already taken in the past?
Okay, good question. So I think many of you would also be talking about changing behavior. And Bhavna says in the chat box about reprogramming, which is again about this. Now, when we are talking about changing a behavior of somebody else, then the first thing that comes into play is the intent. Is that person having an intention to change in a behavior or not? Intention is a must. So the choice of our doing an intervention comes at the point of intention. If the intention is not there, then I think the game is already spoiled out there. Now, there are ways to create intentions sometimes, not always, but sometimes you can use metaphors and stories to create some level of intention. Now, assumingly there is an intention that somebody wants to change the behavior, then we do something called goal mapping. That if when you get into this new behavior, how will it make your life easier and what goals will you achieve? How will your life become better? When we discuss that and the person tells us that these are the benefits, behavior change will start automatically. See, we are very greedy people. We love the benefits of what we are going to get. So the talk of benefit in the future will get the thing going, will get the ball rolling. So that's how it's going to work, like again.
Thank you so much, Ashish.
Okay, thank you. Any more questions for this particular one?
Yeah, Ashish, this is Kuldeep.
Yes, Kuldeep.
Yeah, I just missed one of your point. You're talking about parent-child, a relationship. Or talk about generation gap, and you said that you also call it inter-representation difference, right?
Yes.
So then you said in order to come to a common goal, what we need to work on, giving space, time. So what was the third one? I just missed that.
Presence.
Can
Time,
you
space, and
elaborate?
presence. So I'll explain this. In any relationship, make sure what you're investing in a relationship is at least these. You can invest a lot in a relationship, but I would focus on three very, very important points: time, space, and presence. Let me open this for you. So let's say, as Kuldeep talked about children, and you can talk about any relationship for that matter, most people are ready to invest some time to that relationship, spending the time together. But during that time, are you present in that relationship? Or are you busy on your mobile doing something else? Or are you reading a book? Or are you talking to 10 different people? Or are you lost in your own thoughts or something else? Are you present? Presence is a magical quality to have in any relationship, be it parent-child, brother-sisters, siblings, husband-wife, lovers, friends. Presence is a magical quality. Now, in order for presence to bloom, both time and space are required. Time is where we actually take out time for other people and with the common goal and common purpose of building a solid, strong relationship. Then comes the concept of space. Are we giving enough space for this relationship to bloom? For example, let's say you have a park, a small park in front of you, and you plant a tree and you plant some seeds for them to become a tree. Now, if you plant them too close, maybe the trees will not grow well. They need to bloom. They want to really bloom. So give a lot of space to the person you are with, be it your child, sibling, lovers, spouses. Give a lot of space, share a lot of space. And the concept of space comes from the concept of security. The more secure you are in your relationship, the more open you're going to be about space. So that is what is about time, presence, space, and also, as I said, security. So does that answer your
Thank you.
question?
Yes. Thank you so much. Thank you, Ash.
Welcome. Any other questions about this?
Yeah.
Any other points?
Sonia here.
Yeah, hi Sonia.
Ashish, there's one question wherein you were talking about the decisions and the intent. So you were saying whether the person is ready to change, and if the intent, their intent is not there, so the other person's decision really does not matter, right? Or the game has been spoiled already, right?
I think when you have a lot of patience and time, maybe you can find out what your eyes might be missing that the person wants.
Yeah. So again, at the same time, I think is this also valid? If we take it from the point from a parent's point of view, if there is something they want to imbibe in their children, but definitely, children will definitely not agree to what you're saying. So I don't know. Apart from being role model, what else can be done here?
Yes. So Sonia, as you already know, and we have already discussed this also a couple of times, the first step for any parent who wants to share something with his child as an attitude or a memory or a skill or a way of life, the first thing to understand is what is a child, what age do we call a child a child? When is that a child is flexible enough? What is the learning zone? The learning zone, as we discussed in the beginning of this section, is I don't know what I don't know. And naturally speaking, all children at younger ages are in the stage of that curiosity where they just want to learn everything and they model their parents. Now, as children grow up, sometimes the flexibility may reduce. So during that time, parents can choose to step in and give more presence, more time, more space, and then do indulge into those behaviors, immerse into the behaviors which you want to see in children. See, by the time, this is a very age specific thing actually. By the time you think they can be molded, they've already grown what I would call a child's age. So they're already adults in their mind. They are now, who is an adult according to me? The person who starts taking his own decisions. The person who says, I'm old enough to choose what color of pen I'm going to buy. He's becoming an adult. I am old enough to believe what color shirt I'm going to wear, or who are my friends with whom I would like to go out. The person is starting making decisions. Adulthood starts happening. So it is better to bring these qualities to your children by letting them model you before that. Now we come to the second part of it, that when you see that your child is already taking decisions that you don't think are suitable to you, give them space and talk about benefits of the new behavior. So only talking about the new behavior may not work. Talking about the benefits is a positive reinforcement way to do that. So I think that would yes, Sonia, any more points about this? Yeah. So I think let's go back to the screen once again and see the diagram. And we see here completely on the basis of our discussion today, the whole mind experience at any age group. There is information that is coming from outside, which is what we can call the reality. Then we have our filters, our values, our beliefs, our memories, our attitudes, and our decisions, and a lot more. These things change, transform, manipulate the reality into internal representation with three actions: deletions, distortions, and generalizations. I think somebody's mic is open. Can you close it, please? And then, based on this internal representation, our mind processes into the body and behavioral response. And when this happens, we are, one sec, let me go back. So when this happens, then we see our body and behavior working in a particular way. Now, as we talked, how can this be reversed? It can be reversed by choosing the kind of behavior and body response we want and building an internal representation accordingly by tweaking our values, beliefs, memories, attitudes, decisions, and more. Now, let me also point out this is easier said than done, and that is why NLP helps us a lot in doing all this. So when you go through the NLP programs in detail, there'll be a lot of focus on how to change values, beliefs, memories, attitudes, and decisions. Every day there are going to be discussions and methods and processes about this. This also brings me to a question, and I think we all have the answer. Do we respond to reality or perception? Of course, we respond to the perception. Now, so guys, that was all about neurology I wanted to discuss with you guys today. There are a few other things which are coming up right now. But before that, any questions or anything you'd like to ask me about this?
Ashish, this is Pooja here.
Yes, Pooja.
You spoke about mapping and you spoke about skills mapping and attitudes and beliefs. So I just wanted to understand the mechanism for doing these mappings.
So in NLP based coaching models, especially when we're talking about the relationship coaching models, there are systems and methods and processes we have built which are quite human and conversational. So let's say that there's a couple who comes in and who have decided that they have a common goal of something.
Right.
So one of the examples say that both of them on a piece of paper separately would write at least the top 10 beliefs.
Right.
And then we find out which are the common ones of them.
Okay.
Now, because let's say two people have 10 different beliefs and at least two of them are common, at least two, one or two beliefs.
Right.
So we start working on them with those beliefs which are common. We sow the seeds there and build activities based on those common beliefs. Let's say two people say that, we both love food. Our lives are quite different, but we love food. So I will build all the companionship activities around food. If they say we like movies, I will build all the activities around movies. So whatever is common, we nurture that part. We water that. And then that grows and, blooms towards other areas also. So that's how it works.
Okay. Thank you.
So guys, I hope you have been enjoying today's session a lot. And this is, as I said, the first part of the 3-part series. Today we talked about the neurology and we only barely scratched the surface. There's so much to learn about neurology itself. Next Saturday, 6 p.m. and I'll be posting the link everywhere and I'll be mailing it to everybody for the registration for the second part of it, where I would like to see all of you there. And when I see all of you there, we will be talking about language, NLP, neuro-linguistic programming. The second part is the language. So in next session, we will be talking about the meta model and the Milton model, the two ways language works towards clarity and towards vagueness and ambiguity. And how does that affect our neurology? So I'm sure you're all excited about the second session also. Having said that, I would also like to inform you that from 10th July, we are starting an online program called called the NLP Quick Start Program. It's a foundation program of 10 hours. It'll be in evenings and it'll be about 3.5 hours each day. And all of you can enroll for that program. I'll be sending you some details on your email. And if you can WhatsApp me, you all know my number. It's 9810188629. And I can send you that information also. I'll be posting it in the groups also. A good idea if you can step into it and take this learning to another level. The NLP Quick Start is the standard foundation course which has been promoted by INLP, and you'll be getting INLP certifications based on that. It is not the practitioner certificate because practitioner certificate now we are planning to do only in January, which is the whole offline model as we call it, where all of you are also welcome. Having said that, when you enroll yourself in the NLP Quick Start program, and the fee there is just 6,900, 70% of this fee gets adjusted when you join the NLP practitioner program also. So I think it'll be a great idea for you to join the NLP Quick Start program starting July 10th. And guys, see you in the next session. Thank you so much. I hope you really enjoyed this session. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ashish. Wonderful session.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you, Ashish.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Thanks a lot, Ashish. It was really insightful.
Thank you. Love to see you in the next session. Wonderful. Thank you.
I want to ask you one thing.
Yes, yes.
Like will you suggest us some books that we should read about, like read for preparation for NLP? Like I'm a total beginner and I just came
Okay. So basically, what I would suggest is that see, book is a very theoretical experience. There are a lot of books, and the books are pretty expensive for that matter. I would suggest that you attend these 3 free sessions right now at this point of time, and then when you enroll for a course, before that we send you a pre-reading material. We have compiled an 8-page booklet that gives you all the information, and then you can choose to learn, and you'll have study material and everything. So books, see, some of the best books in NLP, which are the easiest ones also, are available on Amazon. I can give you a list. I can send a link to you. Just WhatsApp it. I'll send you a link. I've listed them all on our website, nlpauthority.com. When you go to nlpauthority.com, there'll be a tab called Library, and there's a tab called Books. So you will see all of my favorite books listed there. So you're going to enjoy that. So, okay, once you attend these sessions, you will get a lot of insight about NLP. We've just started today. There are 2 more sessions coming up. Be there. Let's meet each other there.
Okay, sir. Sir, can you share your mobile number here in the chat box?
My mobile number is 9810188629. My email address is info@nlpauthority.com.
Ashish, could you type your phone number and address in the chat?
Yeah, I've just typed it. Typed it.
So people can probably take it from there. Right.
When you want to know about all the courses, you can go to nlpauthority.com. So the calendar for the next 6 months is now on there. You can choose the courses. We are also coming up with emotional intelligence courses. Very soon, dates will be announced. And,
Ashish, I can see your mobile number in the chat. Could you just type it once again?
Sure. 9810188629. It's at the bottom. You can scroll down at the bottom.
Because the last chat that I can see is from Sindhuja. He's requesting you to share your mobile number. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I don't know why it's going to everyone in waiting room. I have no clue
Then
why.
you can probably
just tell us once again. We can take it down.
98101888629. Let me repeat. 98101888629.
And your email ID is
info@nlpauthority.com. And all the programs you can get at nlpauthority.com.
So the one in January is also mentioned on this?
Yes, it is mentioned. The dates are online right now.
And the course fee also is mentioned there?
Yeah, everything is mentioned there. The whole admission process is mentioned there. Program list is available there on the website. And you can always WhatsApp me and talk to me, and we can discuss.
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody. Thanks a lot. Thanks for coming, and see you soon.